As always, once a shooter or a terrorist's name gets out there, we mine the internet to find out as much information about them as possible. Unfortunately, a lot of the time they find the wrong person. That person's life becomes a living hell for a few days. It doesn't look like that happened in this case, but they found this guy online and found that thanks to his Twitter activity and Facebook activity, that he absolutely despised Republicans, despised Donald Trump in particular, had previously said things about Scalise, one of the Congress people that he shot, but also that he had liked Bernie Sanders at some point, that he had apparently volunteered for Bernie Sanders. And so many in media on the right, even some liberals, thought, ka-ching, I can cash in on this and I can drive home a narrative I want. And so the attacks against Bernie Sanders supporters began immediately. Bernie Sanders did not need to comment on this, but to his credit, he did, both in written form and eventually on the floor of Congress, which we're gonna show you right now.
I have just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice this morning is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. I am sickened by this despicable act, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Real change can only come about through nonviolent action, and anything else runs counter to our most deeply held American values. I know I speak for the entire country in saying that my hopes and prayers are that Representative Scalise, congressional staff, and the Capitol police officers who were wounded make a quick and full recovery. I also want to thank the Capitol Police for their heroic actions to prevent further harm.
So I'm glad that he made that comment. What I noticed from especially the first half where he condemns political violence is that it is the message that he has been delivering for over 41 years of service as a politician in America. And the people who are trying to say that he or his ideology could in any way be responsible for some crazy person who for maybe up to 6 months supported Bernie Sanders, at least during the primary, seems to have turned against him in the general election, that he could be responsible, has never listened to Bernie Sanders speak.
Right.
Has never understood, well, really fast. So one of the things about Bernie Sanders that we all sort of understood early on, but people seem to have forgotten, is one of the benefits of Bernie Sanders is that he doesn't just draw in traditional Democrats or traditional libs. His appeal is broader than that. That means that moderates like him, also a lot of conservatives like him, or at least some of his policies. God only knows what this guy's background was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We don't know. And when you point out in the wake of a terror attack or a shooting, an act of violence, sometimes on TYT, we've criticized the rhetoric coming out of particular media figures or particular politicians, especially Donald Trump during the campaign. And you might think that this is hypocritical to not think that Bernie Sanders is responsible now. But politicians are not responsible for what their supporters do in the abstract. They're responsible when you can point to the rhetoric they use that encouraged violence. And Donald Trump did that multiple times during the primary and during the general election, both in the abstract, saying that violence against people who oppose him would be okay, but also against particular politicians. And that's been the case with people in the right-wing media in the past too. So if Bernie Sanders had said, the 1% has got too much money, so you should chop their heads off, sure, he'd be responsible.
Right,
but that's not an actual quote. Look it up.
Yeah, so look, again, for the billionth time, I do think rhetoric matters from both sides, right? But I also think that you can't just conflate what one person believes with what an entire movement believes or what a couple people believe. So like my issue is, you can only hold Bernie Sanders responsible for what has come out of his mouth. He has not once incited violence, not once. And if you have an example, if you're a conservative who's convinced that his rhetoric is the same as Trump's, please provide the evidence, because I would love to see it, where he has ever called anyone a criminal or a rapist, where he has demonized an entire group of people or an entire religion as being terrorists and being dangerous and being extremists. Give me the examples. Now, if you want to talk about some on the left who might incite violence using rhetoric, maybe those cases do happen, and we speak out against it. Kathy Griffin's ridiculous photo. We spoke out against it. It wasn't helpful. It was really bad imagery, and you don't want to, encourage anyone to do anything dangerous or violent, okay? But blaming Bernie Sanders is ridiculous. And I'm not just talking to conservatives who are doing it, because we see liberals doing it as well. Hardcore Hillary supporters
Joy
that
Reid.
Yeah, Joy Reid's tweet was
nuts.
She needs to reel it back in, okay? Reel
It's like
it back
horrible
in.
take, Joy.
Okay?
Everyday horrible take. I mean, you hit it on the head, Anna, when you said that this conflation between whatever the alt-right is with this alt-left idea, which doesn't exist, right? And it's trying to conflate the actual violence being incited undoubtedly by Trump and his supporters from the top down, the state down, to people who just like Bernie Sanders, who's advocating nonviolence. I mean, and even this guy, he abandoned Bernie Sanders and embraced Hillary's campaign, and he just kept going along with Hillary. I mean, so it's absurdly disingenuous.
Well, I think he eventually, maybe you're seeing something I didn't.
No,
he tweeted some things after the election that seemed more supportive of Hillary, but I read that he said that you should either theoretically write in Bernie or vote for Jill Stein.
But then later on, he said he focused on just Donald Trump and said Hillary didn't do anything wrong, lock him up.
I think that's after the election.
After the election.
But it doesn't matter anyway.
It doesn't matter.
Hillary's not responsible, Jill Stein's not responsible.
The only person who's responsible is the shooter, and anyone who might have encouraged him. And at this moment, we don't know who encouraged him. We don't know if anyone incited violence and that encouraged him. We don't know. The one thing that we do know without a shadow of a doubt is that Bernie Sanders is not responsible for this. He does not condone violence. He has never, ever, ever encouraged violence. And to use your disdain for Bernie Sanders or use this horrible tragic event in order to show your disdain for Bernie Sanders really shows that you just have an agenda. That you don't really care about the facts. You don't really care about who Bernie Sanders is as a person. You just want to place the blame on an individual who, again, is not responsible for this at all.
Yeah, I mean, the guy wrote into his local paper saying Rachel Maddow was his favorite show. And of course, she was the main pioneer of Trump is treasonous, the GOP is treasonous, the Russiagate thing, even though we disagree on that. But I mean, so why zero in on Bernie Sanders but nothing about this? It's just completely disingenuous and horrible.
Yeah, and so I know that we already mentioned it. So I know that she is just one person who has done this, and there are a lot others. But the Joy Reid tweet really just, I mean, I know all week she's been off about Bernie Sanders. And so I called her out on Twitter, like she took some fake fact that was tweeted to her and just agreed with it. That Bernie's his entire career has been propped up by the NRA.
What?
Yeah,
No, that's what it was. The simple search shows that he's gotten deep
was her
F's
take.
from gun control groups or from gun rights groups his entire career. And look, I know, like parties are complex. There are multiple factions. The idea that the people who are trying to keep things the way they've always been in the Democratic Party are simply going to lay down and let the new group take over. I knew that was never going to happen. But we can have an actual debate about things we have said, things we have done and advocated for. We are not going to have that debate by making up ridiculous BS and smearing a guy who has more integrity than possibly any other politician in Washington at this point as being propped up by the NRA and responsible for acts of mass violence.
Commenting on this is one of the most annoying things because I can't win, right? And I don't really care about winning, but you have like the hardcore Bernie supporters who think I'm a corporatist or elitist shill, and then you have the Hillary people that are like, you're part of the reason why Hillary lost the election, right?
I get both those tweets every day.
Yeah, everyone hates me, everyone thinks we're terrible, whatever, I don't care, okay? But what I do care about is just keeping it real with both sides, and especially the side that Joy Reid is on, okay? And I'm talking about Democrats here, not Republicans at all. Okay, look, if you're frustrated at the fact that Hillary lost the election, instead of getting angry and antagonizing people, how about you listen to them and listen to their actual concerns, right? Just listen to their concerns, because demonizing them and antagonizing them will not bode well for you or your party 2 years from now or a year and a half from now, and certainly not 3.5 years from now. Like, wake up, wake up. They're just so bitter about the fact that they lost, and they refuse to just some behavior correction. Just realize, hey, maybe we're not listening to these people. Maybe they have real, genuine concerns that we need to represent. Anyway.
Yeah, they're incapable of self-critique, and that's the problem with establishment Democrats is they can't look at why they lost, how they can win. I mean, if Corbyn wasn't, revealing of how the left actually does have a lot of standing and could gain a lot of ground, I mean, it's just absurd. So again, the conflation of trying to tie this horseshoe theory where you're so left that you're right, and it's just apologizing for this.
Yeah, and one thing, like I'm at some point gonna have to actually sit down and organize my thoughts on this because I'm probably not gonna make a ton of sense. there's this weird idea, and I see it on the left and on the right. There's this obsession with showing how ideologically pure you are, and a belief that there is, yes, and there's people who believe that there's one spectrum you can be on, and super lefty is on this side and super right is on that side, and as you do things and say things, you're just moving to the left and the right. We're always trying to find where people are on that. That's not how life is. Life is much more complicated than that. You can move more progressive or more conservative, but you can also move more wise, less wise, more foolish, more violent, more aggressive. Those are not the same thing. You can have whatever positions you want on politics, but you can also be a real fucking asshole too.
Yeah.
And that is a separate thing. It doesn't make you more left or more right. And so I think that plays into the horseshoe thing, where like the idea that if you're more violent, you are thereby more conservative or more progressive. No, those are different things. People need to be analytical, but not just about their political values and their political goals, but also everything else that makes a human.
What do you get for Young Turks membership? It's a mystery. Only one way to find out. TYTnetwork.com/join.